Princess Lyra stood at the tall window of her family's palace, watching the twin suns set over the crystalline towers of Zephyria Prime. Her forearms were crossed tightly against her chest, and her antennae drooped with frustration. Behind her, the Council of Elders waited in uncomfortable silence. "You cannot be serious," she said finally, her voice sharp. "Marriage? To a human?" Lord Kavan, the oldest of the counselors, shifted his weight. His exoskeleton clicked softly as he moved. "Princess, we have no other choice. The Krell Dominion grows bolder every day. They have already taken 4 of our outer colonies. Without a powerful ally, we will fall." Lyra turned to face them. Her large compound eyes reflected the fading sunlight, making them look like pools of liquid gold. "Then make a military alliance. Sign a treaty. Why must I be sold off like some piece of cargo?" "Because treaties can be broken," another counselor said quietly. "But family bonds are different. The humans value such things deeply. A marriage alliance will ensure Earth's commitment to our protection." Lyra wanted to laugh, but the sound caught in her throat. Earth, the small blue world that had somehow managed to gain a seat at the Galactic Council despite being newcomers to space travel. Nobody understood how they had done it. They were weak creatures, soft and fragile, with only 2 arms and strange smooth skin. The thought of binding herself to one of them made her feel sick. "Have you even met a human?" she asked, her voice quieter now. "They are so strange, so alien." Lord Kavan approached her carefully. "Princess Lyra, I know this is difficult, but your father agrees this is our best path forward. The Emperor himself has approved this union. Of course he had. Her father would do anything to save their people, even sacrifice his only daughter's happiness." Lyra understood duty. She had been raised to put her empire before her own desires, but understanding and accepting were 2 different things. "When?" she asked simply. "The human diplomat arrives tomorrow. You will have 3 months to know each other before the ceremony. 3 months. 90 days to prepare herself for a lifetime bound to a creature she could barely stand to look at." The next morning, Lyra waited in the formal greeting hall. She had chosen her finest robes, deep purple with silver threading that caught the light. If she had to meet this human, she would do so with dignity. Around her, palace guards stood at attention, their weapons gleaming. The doors opened and a small group entered. Lyra recognized the Earth ambassador, a woman named Patricia Cole who had visited before. But her attention fixed on the man walking beside her. He was tall for a human, though still shorter than Lyra. His skin was a warm brown color and his hair was cut short and neat. He wore simple clothes, not the elaborate diplomatic robes she had expected. As he approached, she noticed his eyes. They were dark and calm, showing no fear or disgust at her appearance. "Princess Lyra," Ambassador Cole said with a bow, "may I present Daniel Carter, representative of Earth's diplomatic corps." Daniel stepped forward and bowed respectfully. The gesture was perfect, following Zephyrian custom exactly. "Your Highness, it is an honor to meet you." His voice was steady and warm. Lyra found herself surprised. She had expected arrogance or nervousness, but he showed neither. "Mr. Carter," she replied formally. "Welcome to Zephyria Prime. Please, just Daniel." He smiled slightly. "I hope we can speak plainly with each other. These next months will be easier if we are honest." Lyra blinked. Most diplomats loved fancy words and careful phrases. This human seemed different. "Very well, Daniel. Shall we walk? I can show you the palace gardens." As they left the formal hall, Ambassador Cole and the guards following at a respectful distance, Lyra tried to think of what to say. Daniel solved the problem for her. "I know this situation is not ideal," he said quietly. "Neither of us chose this. But I want you to know that I will do everything I can to make this work. Not just for our peoples, but for you as well." Lyra glanced at him, suspicious. "Why?" "You do not know me." "No, but I know what it is like to have duty placed on your shoulders, to make sacrifices for others." He looked out at the gardens ahead of them. "I also know that just because something starts from duty does not mean it cannot grow into something more." They walked in silence for a while, entering the vast gardens that surrounded the palace. Flowering plants from across the empire grew there, filling the air with sweet scents. Daniel stopped occasionally to admire something, asking questions about the different species. "This one is beautiful," he said, pointing to a cluster of blue flowers that only bloomed at night. "What is it called?" "Midnight tears," Lyra answered. "They are from our northern continent. Very rare. Daniel leaned closer to look at them, careful not to touch. They remind me of flowers we have on Earth. We call them morning glories, though they are purple, not blue. You enjoy plants? I find them peaceful. In my travels, I have seen many worlds, but I always appreciate the small, beautiful things that grow. Lyra studied him carefully. He did not seem like a warrior or a politician. He seemed gentle, almost scholarly. Could Earth really think this quiet man could help protect her empire? As if reading her thoughts, Daniel turned to her. You are wondering if I am strong enough to be useful to Zephyria? Lyra's antennae twitched with embarrassment. I did not mean to offend. You did not. It is a fair question. Daniel smiled again, but there was something different in his eyes now, something harder to read. Strength comes in many forms, Princess. I may not look like much, but I promise you this. Any empire that threatens Zephyria will regret it. The way he said it, so quietly and calmly, sent an odd feeling through Lyra. It was not quite fear, but something close. For just a moment, she saw something in his expression that did not match his gentle manner. But then it was gone, and he was pointing at another flower, asking its name. That evening, after Daniel had been shown to his quarters, Lyra sat with Lord Kavon in her private chambers. What do you think of him? The old counselor asked. Lyra considered carefully. He is not what I expected. He seems kind, perhaps too kind to be of any real use. Lord Kavon made a thoughtful sound. I did some research after his name was announced. There is very little information about Daniel Carter before he joined the diplomatic corps 5 years ago. What does that mean? I am not sure, but I find it odd that Earth would send someone so unknown for such an important alliance. The old counselor moved toward the door. Be careful, Princess. Still waters often run very deep. After he left, Lyra returned to her window, looking out at the stars. Somewhere out there, the Krell fleet was gathering. War was coming, whether she married this human or not. She just hoped Daniel Carter was more than he appeared to be. 3 months passed faster than Lyra expected. She had spent most of that time with Daniel, learning about Earth and teaching him about Zephyria. He was a good listener and never made her feel strange for her appearance. Slowly, her discomfort around him faded. He was kind, thoughtful, and surprisingly funny, but she still saw him as merely a diplomatic tool, nothing more. Now the wedding day had arrived. The ceremony was held on Gateway Station, a massive neutral space station that floated between several star systems. It was the perfect location for such an important event. Representatives from dozens of empires had come to witness the union between Zephyria and Earth. Lyra stood in her preparation chamber wearing the traditional wedding robes of her people. They were white and gold, flowing down all 4 of her arms like waterfalls of silk. Her attendants had polished her exoskeleton until it gleamed like black pearls. You look beautiful, daughter, her father said as he entered the room. Emperor Thane was old now, his once shining shell dulled with age, but his eyes were still sharp. I look like a sacrifice, Lyra replied quietly. Her father placed one hand on her shoulder. I know this is hard, but you are saving our people. That takes more courage than any battle. Lyra nodded, not trusting herself to speak. She had accepted this fate, but that did not make it easier. The ceremony hall was enormous, with a transparent dome that showed the stars above. Thousands of guests filled the seats, representing the most powerful empires in the galaxy. Lyra walked down the long aisle, her father beside her, while music played from instruments across 100 worlds. At the altar, Daniel waited. He wore formal Earth clothing, a dark suit that looked simple compared to the elaborate robes of the other dignitaries. But he stood straight and calm, and when Lyra reached him, he smiled at her with genuine warmth. You look amazing, he whispered as she took her place beside him. The ceremony began. It blended both human and Zephyrian traditions with prayers and rituals from both cultures. Lyra spoke her vows clearly, promising to honor the alliance between their peoples. Daniel did the same, his voice steady and sure. When it was done, they were married. The crowd erupted in applause and celebration. The reception that followed was even grander than the ceremony. The main hall had been decorated with flowers and lights from countless worlds. Long tables held food from every corner of the galaxy. Music filled the air as diplomats and nobles mingled, making deals and alliances under the cover of celebration. Lyra sat at the high table with Daniel, greeting the endless line of well-wishers. Most were polite, offering congratulations and gifts. But Lyra noticed something strange. Many of the guests seemed more interested in Daniel than in her. A delegate from the Vortan Collective, a species of tall reptilian beings, approached their table. He bowed to Lyra, but his eyes stayed fixed on Daniel. Congratulations on your union, the Vortan said smoothly. Earth has chosen its representative well.
Thank you, Daniel replied pleasantly.
I hope this marriage strengthens bonds between all our peoples. The Vortan smiled, showing rows of sharp teeth. Indeed. It has been many years since we have seen you at these gatherings, Daniel Carter. Something in the way he said Daniel's name made Lyra's antennae twitch. There was weight to it, meaning she did not understand. But Daniel just nodded politely, and the Vortan moved on. Later, a representative from the Shadow Syndicate approached. They were a mysterious species who rarely showed themselves in public, preferring to work through intermediaries. The fact that one had come personally was unusual. The Shadow delegate stopped in front of Daniel and bowed very low, much lower than protocol required. "It is good to see you well," the delegate said softly. "We had heard you had retired." "I have," Daniel answered. "I work for peace now, not other things." The delegate nodded and left quickly, as if afraid to stay too long. Lyra leaned closer to Daniel. "Why do they all look at you like that?" "Like what?" Daniel asked, taking a sip of his drink. "Like they are afraid of you." Daniel was quiet for a moment. "Old reputation, I suppose. I told you I traveled a lot before joining the diplomatic corps." Before Lyra could ask more, a new guest approached. This one made the entire hall go quiet. Ambassador Drex of the Krell Dominion was a massive creature, easily 3 meters tall, with thick gray skin and 4 eyes that glowed red. The Krell were the greatest military power in the galaxy, and everyone knew they had been threatening Zephyria's borders. Drex stopped in front of their table and looked down at them. His face was unreadable. "Princess Lyra," he rumbled. "A beautiful ceremony. I hope this alliance brings your people the security they seek." There was a threat hidden in those words. Lyra felt her heart beat faster, but she kept her voice calm. "The Krell Dominion is always welcome to pursue peace with Zephyria." Drex's eyes shifted to Daniel. "And you, human. Earth is far away. I wonder how effective your protection will truly be when tested." The hall had gone completely silent now. Everyone was watching. This was more than a conversation. It was a challenge. Daniel set down his glass and stood slowly. He was much smaller than the Krell ambassador, but he did not look afraid. He looked calm. Dangerously calm. "Ambassador Drex," Daniel said quietly. "I remember the last time the Krell tested boundaries. It did not end well for you." Drex's 4 eyes widened. His skin turned a shade paler. Around the hall, several other delegates gasped or whispered to each other. You were," Drex started to say, but stopped himself. Daniel stepped closer, his voice dropping so only those nearest could hear. "I am retired now. I want peace. But if anyone threatens my wife or her people, they will learn that some things never change." For a long moment, nobody moved. The massive Krell warrior stared at the small human, and something passed between them, some understanding that Lyra could not grasp. Then Drex stepped back and bowed. Actually bowed. To Daniel, of course. "The Krell Dominion wishes only friendship with Zephyria. Please excuse me." He turned and left quickly, his guards hurrying after him. The hall erupted in whispers. Lyra stared at Daniel, her mind racing with questions. What had just happened? Why had the most powerful military ambassador in the galaxy backed down from her husband? Daniel sat back down and picked up his glass as if nothing unusual had occurred. "Where were we?" "Daniel," Lyra said slowly. "What was that? What did he mean when he said you were, what did you do to the Krell?" Daniel looked at her, and for the first time since they met, she saw something hard in his eyes. Something that spoke of strength and danger and things he had not told her. "We should talk," he said quietly. "But not here. Tonight, in private, I will tell you everything." The rest of the reception passed in a blur. Lyra smiled and thanked guests, but her mind was elsewhere. She watched as battle-hardened warriors and powerful politicians approached Daniel with respect that bordered on fear. She saw how carefully they chose their words around him. She noticed how some would not even make eye contact. Who had she married? 1 month after the wedding, Lyra stood in the command center of the Zephyrian Defense Fleet, watching the tactical displays with growing dread. Red markers showed enemy positions along their border worlds. 3 colonies had gone dark in the past week, their communications cut off. "The Krell are not even trying to hide it anymore," General Voss said, his antenna flat against his head in anger. "They have blockaded Outpost 7 and landed ground troops on New Haven." Emperor Thane leaned heavily on the edge of the display table. "How many ships do they have in the attack fleet?" "At least 40 warships, Your Majesty. Maybe more gathering beyond sensor range." General Voss pointed to the holographic map. "Our forces are spread too thin. If they push forward, we cannot hold them." Lyra felt her chest tighten. This was exactly what the marriage alliance was supposed to prevent. Where was Earth's mighty protection now? As if summoned by her thoughts, Daniel entered the command center. He had been given security clearance as her husband, though most of the military staff still viewed him as little more than a political decoration. "How bad is it?" he asked, moving to stand beside Lyra. "Very bad," she answered quietly. "The Krell have begun a full invasion. 3 colonies already, and their main fleet is assembling for a larger strike." Daniel studied the displays carefully, his face thoughtful. "Have you contacted Earth's military command?" General Voss snorted. "We sent a request for aid 6 hours ago. Earth is 3 weeks away at best, even with their fastest ships. By then, half our empire could be conquered." "I see." Daniel pulled out a small device from his pocket, something Lyra had never seen before. It looked like a simple communication pad, but older, worn from use. "What is that?" she asked. "An old emergency channel," Daniel said. Emperor Thane waved his hand. "Do what you can, though I fear it will not be enough." Daniel stepped to the side of the room and typed something into the device. The message was short, just a few lines. Then he put the device away and returned to the table. "That is it?" General Voss asked, unable to hide his disappointment. "A message?" "Sometimes that is all you need," Daniel replied calmly. Lyra wanted to believe him, but looking at the red markers spreading across the map like a disease, she felt hopeless. What could one message do against 40 warships? 4 hours later, everything changed. "General," a communications officer called out, "we are receiving reports from the Krell fleet. They are pulling back." "What?" Voss rushed to the officer's station. "That makes no sense. Show me." The main display updated. The Krell ships that had been advancing were now moving away from Zephyrarian space. Slowly at first, then faster, as if something had spooked them. "Are we sure this is not a trick?" Emperor Thane asked. "I do not think so, Your Majesty. Our scouts report they are genuinely retreating. Some of their commanders are sending encrypted messages to each other, but we cannot break the code." Daniel moved closer to look at the displays. Lyra watched his face carefully. He did not look surprised. He looked satisfied, like someone watching a plan unfold exactly as expected. "What did you do?" she asked quietly. Before he could answer, another officer spoke up. "Sir, we are detecting unknown ship signatures at the edge of the system. They just appeared on sensors." "How many?" General Voss demanded. "Difficult to say." "They are using some kind of stealth technology, but at least a dozen, maybe more."
"They are not broadcasting identification codes."
Emperor Thane turned to Daniel. "Are those Earth ships?" "Not exactly," Daniel said, "but they are friends." "What kind of answer is that?" Voss snapped. "Who are they?" The mysterious ships did not move closer. They just stayed at the system's edge, silent and watching. But their presence was enough. Within the hour, the Krell fleet had completely withdrawn from Zephyrarian space. The blockade of Outpost 7 ended. Ground troops on New Haven began evacuating. Then, even stranger, an official message arrived from the Krell High Command. It was addressed directly to Emperor Thani. The communications officer read it aloud, his voice confused. "The Krell Dominion wishes to express regret for recent misunderstandings along our shared border. We propose immediate peace talks and a non-aggression treaty." The entire command center fell silent. Lyra stared at the message in disbelief. The Krell did not apologize. They did not retreat. They were the most aggressive military power in the galaxy. "This is impossible," General Voss whispered. Emperor Thane looked at Daniel with new eyes. "What did that message say? The one you sent?" Daniel met his gaze steadily. "I simply reminded some old acquaintances that Zephyria is under protection now, that any attack on your empire would be considered a personal offense." "And they listened to you?" Lyra asked. "The Krell Dominion retreated because of you?" "They retreated because they remember what happens when they do not listen," Daniel said quietly. Lyra grabbed his arm, her patience finally breaking. "Enough riddles, Daniel. Tell us the truth. Who are you really?" Daniel looked around the command center at all the staring faces.
Then he nodded slowly.
"Not here." "Your Majesty, Princess Lyra, may we speak privately?" Emperor Thane led them to a secure conference room. Only General Voss joined them, as the head of military forces. Once the doors sealed, Lyra turned to Daniel. "Talk. Now." Daniel sat down and took a deep breath. 15 years ago, I was not a diplomat. I was a commander in Earth's Special Operations Division. My job was to handle threats that could not be solved through normal military action. What kind of threats? Voss asked. The kind that could start galactic wars, Daniel answered. About 14 years ago, the Krell Dominion developed a weapon. It was called the Nova Hammer, a device that could destabilize stars and destroy entire solar systems. They planned to use it to conquer their neighboring empires and establish dominance over this entire region of space. Lyra felt cold. How did you stop them? I did not stop the weapon. I made it disappear. Daniel's voice was calm, but there was steel underneath. I infiltrated their research facility, copied all their data, then destroyed the weapon and every piece of research they had. The Krell tried to rebuild it, but I had already shared the defensive countermeasures with every major empire. The weapon was useless. You went alone into Krell space? Voss asked, disbelief in his voice. Not alone. I had a small team. But yes, we'd penetrated their most secure facility, fought our way out, and made sure that weapon could never threaten anyone. Emperor Thane leaned back in his chair. That is why Ambassador Drex recognized you, why he backed down at the wedding. The Krell have long memories, Daniel confirmed. After the Nova Hammer incident, I dealt with several other situations. The Vortan Collective had a slave operation running on the Outer Rim worlds. I exposed it and freed over 1 million people. The Shadow Syndicate was planning assassinations of 12 planetary leaders to create chaos. I stopped them and dismantled their network. Lyra's mind was reeling. The gentle, quiet man she had married was a legend. A ghost story that military commanders told to frighten each other. Those ships at the system edge, she said slowly. Who are they? Old teammates. People I worked with over the years. When I sent that message, I was calling in favors. Daniel looked at each of them. I retired 5 years ago because I was tired of fighting. I wanted to build peace instead of just preventing war. But I still have friends. People who owe me their lives, their worlds, their freedom. Lyra paced back and forth in the private quarters she shared with Daniel aboard the Zephyrian flagship. The revelation in the command center had left her head spinning. Every time she looked at her husband now, she saw someone completely different from the gentle diplomat she thought she knew. Daniel sat quietly on the curved seating near the window, watching the stars drift past. He had not said much since they left the meeting with her father and General Voss. He seemed to be waiting for her to process everything. Finally, Lyra stopped pacing and turned to face him. I need to know everything. Not just the brief version you told my father. I want the whole truth. Daniel nodded slowly. All right, but some of it is not pleasant. I did not marry you for pleasant stories, Lyra said sharply. I married you thinking you were a simple diplomat. Now I learn you are some kind of legendary warrior that entire empires fear. So tell me who Daniel Carter really is. Daniel stood and walked to the window. For a long moment, he just stared out at the stars. When he finally spoke, his voice was distant, like he was remembering things he had tried to forget. I grew up on Earth during a difficult time. Humanity had just discovered faster-than-light travel and made contact with other species. We were excited, but also terrified. The galaxy was so much bigger and more dangerous than we imagined. He turned to face her. When I was 22, I joined Earth's military. I was good at strategy, at thinking several steps ahead. They noticed and recruited me for special operations. At first, it was simple missions. Rescue hostages, gather intelligence, protect Earth diplomats on dangerous worlds. When did it change? Lyra asked, sitting down across from him. About 16 years ago. Earth discovered that the Vortan Collective was secretly running massive slave operations. They were kidnapping people from developing worlds and selling them across the galaxy. Millions of beings in chains suffering in mines and factories.
Daniel's hands clenched into fists.
Earth wanted to expose it through diplomatic channels, but we knew it would take years. The Vortan had too much influence, too many allies. Meanwhile, people were dying every day, so they sent me with a small team to get proof that could not be ignored. What did you do? We spent 6 months infiltrating the Vortan network. We pretended to be slave traders ourselves, earned their trust. It was the hardest thing I have ever done, watching the suffering and pretending not to care. His voice grew rough. But we gathered evidence, documents, recordings, everything we needed. Then we freed 3 labor camps and broadcast the proof across every news network in the galaxy. Lyra watched him carefully. She could see the weight of those memories in his eyes. The Vortan Collective collapsed within a year, Daniel continued. Their government fell, their economy crashed, over 1 million slaves were freed, but I made powerful enemies that day. The Vortan leaders who escaped wanted me dead. Is that when you became the person everyone fears? No. That came later with the Krell. Daniel sat down again, his shoulders heavy. 2 years after the Vortan operation, Earth intelligence discovered the Nova Hammer project. The Krell were building a weapon that could destroy stars. Imagine it, Lyra. Entire solar systems wiped out. Billions of lives ended in minutes. How did you even get close to something like that? Daniel smiled sadly. Very carefully, I studied Krell culture for 8 months. Learned their language, their customs, their military protocols. Then I went in disguised as a Krell engineer from a remote colony. My team stayed outside their space, ready to extract me if things went wrong. You went alone into their most secure facility? It was the only way. Too many people would have been noticed. Daniel looked at his hands. I worked in that research station for 3 months. Every day, I copied data and sent it out in tiny bursts that their security could not detect. I watched them test that weapon on uninhabited systems, saw stars die. It was beautiful and terrible. Lyra felt a chill run through her. How did you destroy it? On the day they planned to demonstrate the Nova Hammer to the Krell High Command, I sabotaged the power core. The weapon overloaded and destroyed itself along with the entire research station. His voice dropped to almost a whisper. 300 Krell scientists died in that explosion. I killed them to save billions of others, but I still see their faces sometimes when I sleep. The room fell silent. Lyra did not know what to say. She had thought of Daniel as either a simple diplomat or a fearless hero. She had not considered the cost of what he had done. After that, Daniel continued, I became a ghost story. The human who walked into Krell space and destroyed their ultimate weapon. Other empires started contacting Earth, asking for my help with their own problems. The Shadow Syndicate was planning to assassinate leaders across a dozen worlds to create chaos they could profit from. I hunted down their assassins one by one and exposed their entire network. How many missions were there? 17 major operations over 10 years, Daniel said. Each one stopping something that could have killed millions or started wars. I worked with teams from different species, made allies across the galaxy. Those ships that appeared at our system edge? Some of them were people I saved. Others were warriors I fought beside. They owe me their lives or their worlds, and they do not forget debts like that. Lyra stood and walked to him. Why did you stop? If you were so good at it, why retire? Daniel looked up at her, and she saw exhaustion in his eyes. Because I was becoming the very thing I fought against. I was solving every problem with force and fear. Yes, I stopped wars, but I also killed people. I destroyed governments and ended lives. I told myself it was for the greater good, but the truth is, I was losing myself. He stood and faced her directly. 5 years ago, I finished a mission that went wrong. We were trying to stop a weapons deal, but innocent people got caught in the crossfire. A family died because of my choices. That night, I realized I could not do it anymore. I was so focused on preventing big catastrophes that I forgot about the small lives that got destroyed along the way. So, you became a diplomat? I wanted to build peace instead of just preventing war. I wanted to use my knowledge of how these empires work to create real, lasting alliances. When Earth asked me to represent them in this marriage arrangement, I agreed because I saw a chance to actually help people without violence. Lyra reached out and took his hands in hers. But you are still that warrior when you need to be. You proved that when you scared off the Krell fleet. I did not want to use that reputation, Daniel said. But I will not let anyone hurt you or your people. That is why those ships came. Not because I ordered them, but because they knew I would never ask unless it was truly important. 2 weeks after the Krell withdrawal, Lyra stood beside Daniel in the Grand Council chamber on Zephyria Prime. News of Daniel's true identity had spread through the galaxy's intelligence networks like wildfire. What had started as whispers and rumors was now confirmed truth. Princess Lyra of Zephyria had married Commander Daniel Carter, the ghost who haunted the nightmares of corrupt empires. The results were immediate and surprising. Another trade proposal, Lord Kavon announced, holding up a data tablet. This one from the Meridian Commonwealth. They're offering extremely favorable terms. Emperor Thane looked over the document with raised eyebrows. These terms are almost too good. What do they want in return? Just friendship with Zephyria, apparently, Kavon said, though his tone suggested he found that hard to believe. Lyra knew the real reason. Every empire in the galaxy now wanted to be on good terms with Zephyria because being enemies meant dealing with Daniel. It should have made her happy. Her people were safer than they had been in decades. But something about it felt wrong. We are not truly allies, she said quietly to Daniel as they left the council chamber. They are just afraid of you. Fear can be the beginning of peace. Daniel replied. But you are right. It is not real friendship. They walked together through the palace gardens, the same place where they had first talked months ago. So much had changed since then. Lyra no longer saw Daniel as a weak human or a simple diplomat. But she also struggled to reconcile the gentleman beside her with the legendary warrior everyone else feared. Do you regret it? She asked suddenly. Marrying me? You could have stayed retired, lived quietly somewhere. Instead, you are back in the middle of galactic politics. Daniel stopped walking and turned to her. I do not regret it for a second. Yes, this brought me back into the spotlight I was trying to avoid. But it also gave me something I never thought I would have. What is that? A partner. Someone I can trust completely. He smiled softly. Someone who sees both sides of me and does not run away. Before Lyra could respond, an urgent message arrived on Daniel's communication device. His expression darkened as he read it. What is wrong? Lyra asked. There is a situation developing on the border between the Talvek Union and the Corsair Republics. A refugee ship carrying families from a destroyed colony is caught between their territories. Neither side will let them through. Why not? Politics. The Talvek blame the Corsairs for the colony's destruction. The Corsairs claim the refugees are actually Talvek spies. Meanwhile, 5,000 people are stuck in space with dwindling supplies. Lyra felt anger rise in her chest. Can you do something? Use your reputation to force them to help? Daniel was quiet for a moment, thinking. I could. One message from me and both sides would probably back down. But that would just be using fear again. It would not solve the real problem between the Talvek and Corsairs. They would still hate each other, and next time there might not be someone to scare them into doing the right thing. So what do? We try something different. Daniel looked at her with determination. We try actual diplomacy. Are you willing to help? Over the next 3 days, Lyra learned what Daniel meant by real diplomacy. They traveled to the neutral station where representatives from both the Talvek Union and the Corsair Republics had agreed to meet. Daniel did not threaten or intimidate. Instead, he listened. The Talvek representative, a tall being with crystalline skin named Shara, was angry and hurt. The Corsairs destroyed our colony with their reckless weapons testing. 200,000 of our people died. Now they want us to accept the refugees? Why should we help them? The Corsair representative, a four-armed being called Nexor, was equally defensive. The colony destruction was an accident. Our weapons malfunctioned. We have apologized, but the Talvek refused to hear it. And those refugees are not ours. They are from a neutral colony that happened to be in Corsair space. For hours, Daniel let them argue and accuse each other. Lyra watched, frustrated, wondering why he did not just order them to cooperate. Then, slowly, she began to understand his strategy. He was letting them exhaust their anger. When both representatives finally fell silent, tired from their arguing, Daniel spoke for the first time. You are both right, he said simply. Shara and Nexor both looked at him in surprise. The Talvek have every right to be angry about their colony. That was a tragedy that should never have happened. Daniel looked at Shara. But holding refugees hostage does not bring your people back. It just creates more suffering. Then he turned to Nexor. And the Corsairs are correct that the refugees are not your responsibility. But you are responsible for what happened to the Talvek colony. An apology is not enough when 200,000 people died. So what do you suggest? Nexor asked coldly. The refugees need immediate help. Let them through to safe territory. Both of you should contribute resources to help them settle. Daniel pulled up a holographic display showing the refugee ship. These people have lost everything. They do not care about your politics. They just want to survive. And what about justice for our colony? Shara demanded. That requires a separate negotiation, Daniel said. One that will take time and honest effort from both sides. I am willing to help mediate that discussion, but only if you both commit to finding a real solution, not just scoring points against each other. Lyra stepped forward, surprising herself. Zephyria will also contribute resources to help the refugees, and we will host the negotiations between your peoples on our home world. Neutral ground where both of you can speak freely. Both representatives looked at each other, then at Daniel and Lyra. Finally, Shara nodded. If Commander Carter is willing to mediate, the Talvek Union will participate. The Corsair Republics agree as well, Nexor said reluctantly. Within hours, the refugee ship was given safe passage. Both the Talvek and Corsairs sent supply ships to help. It was not a complete solution, but it was a start. That night, back on Zephyria Prime, Lyra sat with Daniel on the balcony of their quarters. The twin moons were rising, casting silver light across the gardens below. You could have forced them to help the refugees with just your reputation, Lyra said. It would have been faster. Faster, yes. Better, no. Daniel took her hand gently. Fear makes people obey, but it does not make them understand. Those representatives needed to see each other as people, not just enemies. Now maybe they have a chance at real peace. Is that what you want? To be a peacemaker instead of a warrior? I want to be both when I need to be, Daniel said. I will use my reputation to protect people when there is no other choice. But whenever possible, I want to solve problems through understanding, not threats. Lyra leaned against him, feeling the warmth of his presence. I married you thinking you were just a political arrangement. Then I learned you were the most dangerous person in the galaxy. Now I am learning you might also be the most hopeful. Daniel laughed softly. I am just a person, Lyra. Someone trying to do better than I did before.